This has been a week where the focus has been very much on the implementation of the major legislation that was passed to deal with the coronavirus. If you recall, literally 2 weeks ago on Friday, Congress passed the largest spending bill in American history. And just to give you an idea of the scope, that bill literally spent more money than Congress normally appropriates in an entire year to fund the federal government. A lot of components of that, everything from individual checks to Americans, to a program to help small businesses maintain their workforce while they're under mandatory shutdowns and continue to pay their people, additional money for the unemployment compensation fund because we're having an unprecedented surge of claims there. More money again for the Treasury to bolster our airlines, major corporations like Boeing, and like additional money for hospitals, additional money for schools, both of which are facing difficult times. So a pretty major bill. Probably the most important program right now is what's called the Paycheck Protection Program, which lets businesses keep of less than 500 keep their workforces in place as long as they continue to pay them. So you can get a loan to do that, but if you spend it the way we ask you to, that is 75% of it spent on wages for your workers, then the entire loan up to $10 million can be forgiven and will be forgiven by the federal government. The aim here is just simply to help small businesses make it through an economic disaster that they had no responsibility for. And small businesses that are complying with government ordered shutdowns and furloughs, obviously need this kind of assistance. I will tell you, there's already of the $350 billion set aside for that. As of yesterday morning, that is, or yesterday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, over $90 billion had already been obligated, gone out the door. So this is a program that we know is going to need additional money. There was an effort this morning in the Senate to add $250 billion more. Frankly, there's no disagreement about that between Democrats and Republicans, but Democrats want some additional money for hospitals, additional money for state and local governments, additional money for nutrition programs. All those things, by the way, may well be necessary, but we've already set aside $150 billion for state and local governments, for instance, that has not yet been distributed. The Republican argument is let's distribute that first, make sure that the implementation works, then come back, take a look at what they need in addition. Same thing is true with hospitals. We set aside $100 billion 2 weeks ago in the original bill. $30 billion of that will go out to hospitals literally today and tomorrow to help them on a sort of formula based on what the Medicare payments to them every year are. We know that formula is not perfect. There are a number of places that won't get help that need it. Children's hospitals, for instance, they don't treat a lot of people 65 and over, so they don't get Medicare payments. So we're going to come back and take care of them in the next round. But again, the argument is, we're going to get to this. Let's use the money we've already set aside, see what we really need. So while it's a little bit frustrating to see this partisan tit for tat in the United States Senate, and I must say we've passed 3 major bills with very little dissent and no partisan division. I'm very comfortable we will work this out, that we will not run out of money for the Paycheck Protection Program. But the two sides are just going to have to negotiate through the weekend, get it done. We certainly have enough money to continue the program for the next week or so, and probably toward the end of next week. So at the end, I'm comfortable it'll be resolved. But again, it's disappointing to see this. Finally, let's talk a little bit about how we're doing in terms of the virus itself. We're certainly seeing an extraordinarily negative economic impact. In the last 3 weeks, 17 million Americans have been forced to apply for unemployment compensation. Now, fortunately, Congress has put in enough money that you not only get what you normally would get, but an additional $600 a week through the end of June. But remember, the end of February, literally 5 short weeks ago, we had more jobs available in the United States than we had people looking for jobs. We had the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. And now, because of the impact of this virus, we've seen more Americans go out of work in a shorter period than any other time in our history. Again, to give you some perspective, the number of people in the last 2 weeks, and either one of the last 2 weeks, that have applied for unemployment is almost 10 times greater than any other time in American history when people have showed up and asked for an unemployment check. So this is extraordinary in its scope and devastating economically. In terms of disease, obviously we continue to see a mounting death toll and continued spread of infections. And we've had some hard days, and there's going to be some hard days ahead of us. But in some parts of the country, we see that the curve has peaked and is starting to come down. I think particularly in the West Coast, in Washington and California, we're seeing a lot slower rates of infection, a lot slower rates of hospitalization, declining numbers of deaths. New York, which is probably the worst spot in the United States, most difficult state, and certainly New York City, most difficult single city. Again, it's horrific. We're losing hundreds of people a day that are dying, and again, many more obviously being infected. But the rates have stabilized and have started to come down in the last 4 or 5 days. So we may be past the worst of it. But there's still plenty to go. A place like Oklahoma, we probably have not hit our peak yet, and we're going to have some tough days. But remember, New York City is about twice the size of the state of Oklahoma in terms of population. Again, we've had 79 or 80 deaths. Every one is too many. But we've not had situations where 500 and 600 people a day are dying as they are in New York. So we've been comparatively lucky compared to a lot of states. We see lots of progress on the testing front. While our healthcare system has been greatly strained, it's not broken any place. That is, to my knowledge at least, ventilators have been available. We've had the protective personal equipment that we need. Now our stocks are very low, and we're going to extraordinary efforts to bring them. But so far, we've been able to meet the demands of everybody just in time in some cases, but at least have met those demands. That's not true in many other parts of the world. So we've actually done a pretty good job. Last point, again, there is some good news. These programs that we're putting in place, the money's getting out the door. As I said, in a period of literally Friday to a Thursday, over $90 billion out the door to small businesses to help them retain their workers. Hospitals should be seeing $30 billion worth of payments today and tomorrow will help them as they struggle through this difficult situation. Schools in the next couple of weeks, K through 12, and the universities will also get some financial help from the federal government. So that part of the program is beginning to kick into place. Again, the disease appears to be stabilizing in some places. We just need to keep our discipline, stay at it, follow the guidelines laid down by your federal, state, and local officials in terms of staying in place, in terms of business openings, in terms of being out. And finally, remember, as challenging as this is, we've got a hopeful season in front of us. Easter is just ahead, and it's sort of symbolic reminder to us that good overcomes all, that there's better things ahead for us. And so I wish you and your family, number one, I hope you're safe. Number two, if you're in a situation where you've been laid off work, please take advantage of these programs that are available. Hopefully your employer's in a position that they can use this, or if you're a small business person, use the funds that are available to maintain your workers. If that's not possible, please go to the unemployment insurance people. A lot of that can be done online, by the way. Take advantage of these programs. They're there for a reason, and that's to help you because you've been the victim of something that's certainly not your fault. But finally, keep the faith. And remember, even in the darkest hours, there's lots of acts of heroism. We see them every day. We hear about neighbors helping neighbors, friends reaching out. We see companies, I think of Covercraft in Pauls Valley in Oklahoma, that was making seat covers and figured out, gosh, what we really probably need are high quality masks, and are now making those, and That's helping ease the supply problems we have in this country. Lots of folks are pitching in and doing the right things. If we stay at this, we'll lick this. We'll begin to see brighter days, at the end of this month and hopefully in the weeks and months after that. But be safe. God bless you and your family. If Easter is a sacred holiday to you, I wish you well and wish you blessings. And again, above all, help your friends and neighbors. Please do the things that you're asked to do by local officials. And remember, it's America, so at the end of the day, we're always going to be successful in overcoming our challenges.